When you face rejection, especially from someone you care about, it is natural to want to retreat into silence. The pain of rejection can be overwhelming, and often the instinct is to shield yourself from further emotional discomfort by becoming distant, pulling away, or avoiding communication altogether. However, it is crucial to understand that this silence, while it might feel like self-protection in the moment, can have a far deeper and more complicated effect than you may initially realize. Silence after rejection does not only affect you, but it also has a significant impact on the other person involved. When you choose silence as a response to rejection, you are not giving the other person the opportunity to understand what you're feeling or to know where they stand. Rejection, no matter how gentle, can stir up confusion and uncertainty. It's a vulnerable position for both parties, and without open communication, that vulnerability can turn into unresolved emotions and misunderstandings. The person who rejected you may find themselves wondering why you have gone silent. They may interpret your silence in various ways. Perhaps they think they've hurt you deeply, or maybe they worry that their decision was wrong or rash. Your silence could even lead them to believe that you are angry, upset, or bitter, leaving with more questions than answers. In addition to confusion, your silence can also hinder the process of closure. It is often said that closure is essential to moving forward, especially after an emotionally charged situation like a rejection. When you fail to respond or address the situation, both parties are left with a sense of unfinished business. Rejection doesn't have to lead to a permanent rift. With open communication, both sides can process their feelings and gain insight into what happened. However, by choosing silence, you effectively shut down the possibility of resolving any lingering questions or doubts. The silence may leave both individuals trapped in a state of emotional ambiguity, preventing them from moving on in a healthy way. Furthermore, the other person may misinterpret your silence as indifference. They might feel that you don't care about them enough to even acknowledge the situation, or worse, that you never cared at all. This perception can intensify their feelings of guilt and self-doubt. Instead of helping them see that rejection is a natural part of relationships and that it doesn't diminish your value or their worth, your silence may make them feel like they've done something irreparable. People often wrestle with guilt after rejecting someone, and your lack of communication could amplify their inner conflict, leaving them to stew in their own feelings of discomfort. It's important to recognize that silence, while it might seem like a way to cope, can create an emotional void that neither of you may be able to navigate on your own. Emotional vulnerability is uncomfortable, but it is also a necessary part of healing and understanding. When you shut down completely, you prevent the possibility of learning from the experience and growing from it. By communicating openly about your feelings, even if it's just a few words, you demonstrate maturity and emotional strength. You are saying, I acknowledge the rejection, and while it's painful, I am willing to process it in a healthy way. This approach allows both parties to move forward with a sense of clarity and emotional peace. It's also worth considering that your silence could inadvertently create an unhealthy emotional dynamic between the two of you. Rejection is rarely a one-sided affair. The person who rejected you likely has their own emotions to work through, and your silence may leave them questioning their own decisions. While it may seem tempting to punish the person who rejected you by withholding communication, this only prolongs the emotional discomfort for both parties. In fact, your silence may cause them to feel more emotionally isolated, making them second-guess their decision and prolonging any potential healing for both individuals. Communication can actually help both of you gain perspective on the situation, and if handled with maturity and respect, it can prevent any unnecessary emotional damage from lingering longer than necessary. Moreover, your silence doesn't necessarily protect you from further emotional pain. On the contrary, by refusing to express your feelings, you may bottle them up, and over time, these suppressed emotions could manifest in unhealthy ways. Anger, bitterness, or sadness can fester when they are not addressed openly, and this emotional suppression may affect other aspects of your life as well, including future relationships or personal well-being. Choosing silence in the face of rejection may provide temporary relief, but it often leads to emotional baggage that weighs you down as time goes on. The reality is that rejection, while painful, doesn't have to be a source of permanent distress. The way you respond to rejection can determine how you heal and whether you are able to move on. Silence may seem like the easy route, but it often leaves more damage in its wake than a conversation would. By choosing to engage with the situation, express your feelings, and communicate openly, you show emotional strength and maturity. Your ability to respond to rejection with grace and vulnerability can help both of you process the experience and find closure, paving the way for emotional healing and growth. Silence may offer a brief respite, but it ultimately leaves both parties in a state of confusion and uncertainty, which only prolongs the emotional struggle. In the end, silence after rejection may seem like a defense mechanism, but it is rarely the solution. Instead, choose to communicate, not out of a desire to control the situation, but because it will help you find clarity, closure, and the emotional strength to move forward in a healthier and more empowered way. After a rejection, many people choose silence as a defense mechanism, believing it will protect them from further hurt. They might think that by staying quiet, they can avoid the awkwardness or pain of confronting the person who has rejected them. However, what they may not realize is that their silence often has a more profound impact than they might expect, both on themselves and on the other person involved. In fact, silence in response to rejection can be far more destructive than it initially seems, and it is crucial to understand that this silence, while it may offer temporary relief, is not the solution to emotional healing. One of the first things to consider when you go silent after being rejected is that it creates an emotional distance between you and the person who rejected you. While it might seem like you're protecting yourself by retreating into silence, you are also shutting off any opportunity for further interaction or closure. Silence can be perceived in many ways, and when someone rejects you and you respond with quiet withdrawal, they may interpret it as you being hurt, angry, or even disgusted by them. Instead of giving the person a chance to understand where you stand or how you feel, silence can create confusion. They may wonder whether they made the right choice or whether they misjudged the situation entirely. In the worst case scenario, silence can cause them to second guess themselves, potentially leading to feelings of guilt, anxiety, and regret. If you truly care about the person who rejected you, you might unintentionally make their emotional burden heavier by not providing any clarity. Furthermore, silence leaves unresolved emotions hanging in the air. When two people experience an emotionally charged situation such as rejection, it's natural for both individuals to need time to process their feelings. However, without open communication, there's no chance to talk through what happened, discuss misunderstandings, or gain perspective on the situation. The process of healing and moving forward requires some degree of resolution, and silence stifles that possibility. Both you and the person who rejected you are left in a state of emotional ambiguity, unable to gain closure or understanding. The longer you remain silent, the longer both of you stay stuck in that limbo, unable to move on from the situation. Another crucial aspect to consider is the psychological impact that silence can have on both parties involved. For you, the person who has been rejected, silence may appear to be a means of self-protection, but it can have the opposite effect in the long run. Repression of emotions often leads to them festering beneath the surface, creating unresolved feelings that can manifest in other areas of your life. You might find that the silence, while providing a temporary sense of relief, ultimately amplifies the emotional pain. By not expressing your emotions, you risk bottling up resentment, hurt, or frustration, and these unaddressed emotions may affect your mental well-being, future relationships, and overall emotional health. For the person who rejected you, silence can leave them with a sense of uncertainty. They might begin to wonder whether they made the right decision or whether they were too harsh in their approach. Rejection is often difficult for both people involved, and one person might feel relief, the other may feel rejected, abandoned, or unsure of how to proceed. Silence removes the chance for them to understand your true feelings and leaves them in a state of confusion. They may question whether you truly understood their reasons for rejecting you or whether the rejection was too much for you to handle. As time goes on, this uncertainty can build up, causing them to rethink the entire situation and potentially create more emotional turmoil than necessary. Moreover, silence can also disrupt the potential for growth. Rejection, while painful, is an opportunity for both people to learn and grow from the experience. If handled properly, it can be a stepping stone toward emotional maturity and personal growth. However, when you respond with silence, you prevent both yourself and the other person from gaining the clarity that could lead to growth. You might find that without open communication, both of you remain trapped in your respective emotional states, unable to gain new insights or learn valuable lessons from the situation. Without the chance to reflect on the experience together, there is no opportunity to clear the air, resolve any lingering issues, or even come to terms with the rejection in a healthy way. In addition to the personal impact of silence, it's important to consider the effect it can have on future relationships. Rejection can be a difficult experience, but how you handle it can set the tone for how you approach future interactions and relationships. If you choose silence as your default response, you may unintentionally carry emotional baggage into your future encounters. By not addressing your feelings in a constructive way, you could carry unresolved hurt or resentment into new relationships, affecting your ability to connect authentically and openly with others. Communication is key to emotional health, and by choosing silence after rejection, you deny yourself the opportunity to build stronger, healthier connections in the future. Additionally, silence can sometimes be interpreted as an emotional manipulation tactic, even if that's not your intention. When someone rejects you and you go silent, they might feel as though you are punishing them for their decision. While it may seem like a way to deal with your own pain, it could inadvertently cause the other person to feel controlled or manipulated, making them question your true intentions. This can lead to unnecessary guilt and confusion on their part and could further complicate the emotional landscape between the two of you. It's important to remember that while silence might feel like the easiest way to protect yourself after a painful experience, it often does more harm than good. It hinders healing, prevents growth, and creates unnecessary emotional confusion for both parties involved. Instead of retreating into silence, try to embrace communication as a tool for clarity and closure. While it may not be easy, expressing your emotions, whether it's through a conversation or a written message, can help you gain perspective, heal faster, and move forward with greater emotional strength. By addressing the rejection head-on and using it as an opportunity for growth, you not only gain closure, but you also improve your emotional resilience and future ability to handle similar situations. Silence may provide temporary relief, but communication is the key to long-term healing and emotional clarity. When someone rejects you, it can feel as though your world has been shaken. Emotions surge and the pain can be intense, leaving you at a loss for how to respond. In these moments, it is natural to want to withdraw, to become silent, and to retreat into yourself. However, what if instead of responding with silence, you viewed this painful experience as an opportunity for growth? The power of silence after rejection is often misunderstood. While it can offer a brief period of emotional detachment, it ultimately limits both personal healing and the chance to understand and move forward from the rejection. When rejection occurs, silence often serves as a defense mechanism. It's a natural instinct to want to protect yourself from further pain, and silence can feel like a way to shield your heart. But this silence doesn't always have the intended effect. What many people fail to realize is that silence in the face of rejection can hinder the process of emotional recovery. By closing yourself off and refusing to communicate your feelings, you're not allowing yourself the opportunity to fully process the situation. Emotions can't be healed when they are ignored or bottled up. Instead, they fester, building resentment or confusion, which only prolongs the pain. In fact, silence can create a toxic cycle of emotional avoidance. Instead of addressing the hurt and exploring the reasons behind the rejection, silence allows those feelings to remain unspoken, leading to uncertainty and even self-doubt. Over time, this silent response can prevent you from healing because you haven't processed the emotions that the rejection brought to the surface. These unresolved feelings will continue to affect you, and your emotional state will be shaped by the unanswered questions and confusion surrounding the rejection. Without taking the time to acknowledge the hurt and gain perspective, you're limiting your emotional growth and delaying your recovery. One of the most important aspects of dealing with rejection is the ability to reflect on the situation. By engaging in open communication, whether through direct conversation with the person who rejected you or by simply expressing your emotions to trusted friends, you are allowing yourself to understand why the rejection occurred and what you can learn from it. Silence only prolongs the emotional pain because it prevents reflection and growth. Without the chance to process the rejection, you miss out on understanding what happened and how you can better approach relationships in the future. Rejection is a painful experience, but it's also an opportunity to learn more about yourself, to understand your emotional triggers, and to discover new ways of handling difficult situations. Another aspect of silence after rejection is its impact on your relationship with the person who rejected you. When you withdraw into silence, you create an emotional distance that can make it more difficult to rebuild any connection. Whether that's a friendship, a potential relationship, or just closure, people might interpret silence as an indication that you are angry, resentful, or unwilling to move on. This only adds more tension to the situation, making it even harder to come to terms with the rejection. Silence might seem like the easy route, but it can make both parties feel uncomfortable and disconnected, preventing any future communication or resolution. If you allow your emotions to remain bottled up, you risk making the rejection feel more final than it actually is. Silence can give the illusion that there's no chance of reconciliation or that everything is over, when in reality, the hurt may just need time to heal. If you are truly interested in maintaining any kind of connection with the person who rejected you, silence can put up a barrier that may prevent any future discussions. It's in these moments that communication becomes key. It doesn't mean you have to immediately confront the person who rejected you, but taking the time to reflect, express your feelings, and open the door to further dialogue can go a long way in clearing the air and understanding each other's perspectives. Silence might feel protective in the short term, but it can make long-term healing much more difficult. On a deeper level, silence after rejection can prevent you from developing emotional resilience. Life is full of challenges, and rejection is something that nearly everyone will face at some point. How you handle rejection determines your emotional strength. If you consistently retreat into silence every time you face rejection, you're teaching yourself to avoid the very situations that can lead to personal growth. Dealing with rejection openly and maturely builds emotional strength, helping you grow as an individual and learn from the experience. Silence, on the other hand, fosters avoidance, which leads to a cycle of missed opportunities for self-discovery and emotional development. When you allow yourself to experience rejection, fully expressing your feelings, learning from the experience, and processing the emotions, you build resilience that helps you face future challenges with greater strength. Additionally, silence can impact your self-esteem in ways that you may not immediately recognize. When you remain silent in the face of rejection, you might be reinforcing the belief that you are not worthy of a healthy, honest interaction. This silence can create a false narrative in your mind that you must retreat or hide your true feelings to protect your sense of self-worth. In reality, rejection is part of life, and it does not define your value as a person. The ability to handle rejection with grace, openness, and communication shows self-respect and self-love. By responding to rejection without fear of vulnerability, you demonstrate to yourself that you are worthy of honesty, connection, and growth. Silence only feeds into feelings of inadequacy, while open communication nurtures your self-esteem and emotional well-being. In essence, silence after rejection might feel like a safe place to hide, but it only prolongs the emotional distress and prevents you from gaining closure. Rejection is a challenging experience, but it is also an opportunity for growth. By facing your emotions, communicating openly, and using the rejection as a chance to reflect, you allow yourself to heal and build emotional strength. Silence may feel comforting in the short term, but it only keeps you stuck in a place of confusion, uncertainty. True healing comes when you choose to confront your emotions, learn from the experience, and communicate openly. This approach not only helps you recover faster, but it also ensures that you grow stronger and more resilient in the face of future challenges. When faced with rejection, the impulse to remain silent often seems like a natural defense mechanism. It's as if silence provides a way to protect ourselves from further harm or embarrassment. However, what many fail to realize is that silence, especially after someone has rejected us, is not just a passive response. It can be an incredibly powerful statement. One communicates a lot more than we might intend. While silence may initially seem like a way to safeguard our emotions, it can often have the opposite effect, especially in terms of how we are perceived by the person who rejected us. Rejection can be painful, and the instinct to withdraw is understandable. We feel vulnerable and exposed, and silence might seem like the best way to avoid further emotional exposure. However, in these moments, it is essential to understand the long-term consequences of silence. When we choose silence as a response to rejection, we may think that we are protecting our feelings, but in reality, we might be hindering our ability to move on and grow. Silence can leave us trapped in our own thoughts, where our feelings fester and grow more complex without any clear resolution. This lack of communication prevents us from gaining the closure we need, and over time, the unresolved emotions can create a barrier to healing. Instead of letting silence keep us stuck in a place of uncertainty and pain, we should recognize that addressing the situation directly is often the best way to regain control of our emotions and facilitate personal growth. One of the critical elements of dealing with rejection is the idea of emotional release. When we respond with silence, we may be denying ourselves the opportunity to express our feelings. Bottling up emotions may give us a temporary sense of protection, but over time, this lack of expression can become toxic. Emotional release is essential for healing, and silence can be the very thing that prevents it. By avoiding communication, we don't give ourselves the chance to process what happened. We might ignore the reasons behind the rejection, and as a result, we miss the opportunity to learn from the experience. Understanding the reason for rejection and processing it through healthy communication allows us to reflect on the situation, learn from it, and grow emotionally stronger. Silence deprives us of this healing process and keeps us in a state of emotional limbo. Moreover, silence can inadvertently affect the person who rejected us as well. While we might feel like we are distancing ourselves from pain, our silence may be sending a message that is interpreted. People may assume that our silence signifies anger, bitterness, or even resentment. These feelings can complicate the situation, making it harder to heal. Instead of moving forward, silence can leave both parties feeling awkward or guilty, which may prevent any possibility of reconciliation or closure. Silence can create distance that is not necessary. Even though it might feel like you are protecting yourself by shutting down, this response can make the person who rejected you feel uncomfortable or unsure about how to approach the situation moving forward. It leaves everything unresolved, and sometimes that unresolved tension can be far more harmful than the rejection itself. Additionally, silence tends to exacerbate our feelings of self-doubt and insecurity. When we are faced with rejection, we often begin to question our self-worth and value. In those moments, our silence can reinforce these negative thoughts. Instead of expressing ourselves, confronting our feelings, and seeking understanding, we internalize our pain and let it eat away at our confidence. Silence can act as a breeding ground for negative self-talk, where we overanalyze the rejection and distort its meaning. We may begin to believe that the rejection is an indication of our inadequacy, that we are somehow unworthy. By allowing silence to dictate our response, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to counteract these harmful thoughts with rationality or healthy self-reflection. We miss the chance to recognize that rejection is not an inherent flaw in ourselves, but rather a part of the unpredictable nature of life and relationships. Rejection is an inevitable part of life, and how we respond to it can significantly impact our emotional growth and resilience. Silence, although it may seem like a temporary solution, ultimately keeps us stuck in a pattern of avoidance and withdrawal. When we refuse to address the rejection, when we choose to retreat into silence, we limit our emotional development. True healing comes when we choose to confront the pain head-on. Instead of bottling up our emotions or allowing them to fester, we must take the time to reflect on what happened and engage in open communication. This process allows us to better understand the situation, find closure, and grow emotionally from the experience. The silence that seems so comforting in the moment actually prevents us from doing the necessary work to move forward in a healthier, more positive way. Moreover, silence after rejection can prevent us from fully reclaiming our personal power. When we withdraw, when we become silent, it may feel as if we are protecting ourselves from further harm. However, what we fail to recognize is that we are giving away our power to the rejection itself. By retreating into silence, we are allowing the rejection to dictate our emotional state, and that can leave us feeling powerless. True power comes from the ability to respond to rejection in a way that is not dictated by fear or insecurity. By choosing to speak openly about our feelings and processing the rejection with a healthy mindset, we reclaim control over how we respond to life's challenges. Silence, on the other hand, reinforces the idea that we are victims of our circumstances, when in fact we always have the power to choose how we navigate life's obstacles. In conclusion, silence in the face of rejection is often viewed as a protective response, but it ultimately prevents us from healing, growing, and reclaiming our emotional strength. While it may offer temporary relief, it creates emotional stagnation and keeps us from fully processing the rejection. Silence also has the potential to negatively impact the person who rejected us, leading to unnecessary distance and misunderstanding. Instead of using silence as a shield, we should embrace communication and reflection as powerful tools for growth. Rejection is painful, but it is also an opportunity for learning, self-reflection, and resilience. By choosing to confront rejection with openness and vulnerability, we allow ourselves to heal, grow, and move forward stronger than before.